August. Mr. Speaker, beside that, I also pushed for the resources to construct the intelligent traffic system. I promised when I came for vetting here. Now the intelligent traffic system has been advertised. 221 junctions are going to be fixed in the Nairobi city, Mr. Speaker, for that technology. I led the process also of PPPs. From the road from Mombasa to Nairobi, the American government, American investor, Mr. Speaker, has made a proposal, and that proposal is ongoing because we have facilitated them. Mr. Speaker, we had a problem with the Rironi Mau Summit, one of the most popular cases. There was an existing contract that I took the a step of courage, Mr. Speaker, to mutually terminate. And Mr. Speaker, we should be able, as the President promised, also to advertise after September when the mutual termination period is over, so that we get a contractor by January next year. Mr. Speaker, in the road sector also, I'd like to say that, Mr. Speaker, we have done a commendable job to raise resources. My last act in that office, Mr. Speaker, was to make sure that we get resources for maintaining our roads. When I came to Parliament several times, because these questions were asked, I appraised the country that we have what we call orphaned roads. And these roads are, especially in Kenya, rural roads, and they needed significant resources. Our demand per year for maintaining the roads is 150 billion, Mr. Speaker, yet we only raised 84 billion. This year, I took the significant step, did the public participation, and eventually we were able to increase the road maintenance levy by 7 shillings, working together with the petroleum sector to make sure that that increase did not make the cost of petroleum higher than it is. If there's something significant I'm leaving back in this ministry for the benefit of the honorable members who are here, we shall be having now constituency roads management having at least 100 million shillings in every constituency, up from 62 million in the last financial year. And we should be able to fix the problems that we have in our roads. That needed leadership, needed boldness, Mr. Speaker, to make that significant contribution. Mr. Speaker, it wasn't just the road sector that I superintended upon. There was also the transport sector. We did a lot in the port. Mr. Speaker, we were able to increase the efficiency of the port by 12%. We handled 1.6 million TEUs of cargo, up from 1.4. And this year, Mr. Speaker, we are going to handle 2 million TEUs. In also that sector, Mr. Speaker, we have increased investment, especially in Lake Victoria. Now the oil transport that I saw Honorable Wandai speaking about, now fuel is being transported across Lake Victoria. You don't need to burden the roads across to Uganda. Mr. Speaker, we are also building piers in Kisumu and also getting a ferry from Fangano Island. Some of those investments, Mr. Speaker, were based on the things we did. In the Lapsset corridor, for the first time, the Lamu port was able to handle significant cargo, 60 million metric tons of fertilizer destined towards Ethiopia, based on our diplomatic work within the Lapsset corridor. Now Lapsset corridor is functioning. The road from Lamu to Ijara, Mr. Speaker, which was a Maram road, we made sure that we fixed that problem. Now a tarmac road is being constructed, it's on the way. We have up to February next year to make sure that that tarmac road is delivered to Ijara, and the road from Ijara to Isiolo is also ongoing, Mr. Speaker. I look forward within next year that the Lapsset corridor will be completed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also did some work at the airport. You remember that when I arrived, the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport was a place of shame. All the airports do not have a maintenance policy. Mr. Speaker, after fixing the human resource, we made sure also we fix the maintenance policy. Now we've been able to fix Jomo Kenyatta International Airport drainage system. We've also been dealt with the roofing, and Mr. Speaker, there is a progress in that direction. We've also fixed, Mr. Speaker, many of the other airports. There was a lighting problem in Eldoret. Wilson Airport, for many of us who are here who've used the Wilson Airport, you know that it's full of potholes and bumps, Mr. Speaker. Now we have awarded the contract to make sure that the aprons and the runway is redone afresh, because Wilson Airport is among the busiest airports in the continent, Mr. Speaker. Even as we did that, we completed also contracts that were pending for our airstrips in Anyuki, airstrip in Nakuru now are ongoing. We finished the Matulo airstrip, Mr. Speaker. We opened new routes for airlines to go to Kabundo in Homa Bay. We did in Migori Migori, Mr. Speaker. We did also new route to Kakamega. Mr. Speaker, now our airspace is booming. I opened doors, Mr. Speaker, for new airlines. We have Fly Dubai now flying to Mombasa. Air Indigo is now flying directly from India to Nairobi. And one of my last also responsibilities was to grant Etihad a flight to come back to Nairobi. All this is done balancing, Mr. Speaker, with the interests of the Kenya, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Airways. Even that, Mr. Speaker, is just a tip of the things we have succeeded to do. Let me just say the last one, Mr. Speaker, is the. You know, I left the minister abruptly, so this is an opportunity to share. And I just in 2 more minutes, Mr. Speaker, is to say that in the railway sector, we've done a very good job to revamp the commuter rail system in the city of Nairobi, increasing the 10 stations in the city. We significantly pushed the Kumi program of the World Bank, which will give us 60 billion shillings to revamp the commuter rail system in the city. And Mr. Speaker, that will also lead to increasing the stations and therefore significantly reduce climate impact in the city and pollution, because we will be using mass transit of the railway. Mr. Speaker, we have done so also by connecting Mombasa to Miritini itself, and we are doing a construction of Reruta, Mr. Speaker, all the way to Ngong and hopefully then to Rongai, so that then we can significantly move our people using commuter rail. I was in the process of getting funding, working together with private sector and Ugandan government to make sure that we extend the railway from Naivasha to Kampala. I believe that my successor, the person who comes after me, my successor, Mr. Speaker, will continue from where we left insofar as that is concerned. There are so many other things we've done in the transport sector, in the Namata. All these will be now factors of history, and we shall have the time to be able to share. So I just want to say this, Mr. Speaker, that even as we accuse the government, and there is a general accusation across board that we've not done the communication, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, no matter how much we try to publicize these great things we have done, it is trounced by criticism and predetermined programming, Mr. Speaker, to label certain people as a failure. I have worked passionately, committed to deliver my work, working sometimes up to midnight, Mr. Speaker, and this is a job I look back and say the last 2 years have been exciting for me, and I look forward to also taking the same energy and vigor to the next ministry. Mr. Speaker, the vision I have for the young people of this republic, there are many people who have asked themselves that, why Murkomen? Why is he being put here? I believe that, Mr. Speaker, the president carefully chose me because of my energy, my commitment, my passion, and my history with young people. Mr. Speaker, I do a lot of mentorship across the country, even when I was in the Ministry of Roads and Transport. Mr. Speaker, I ran a tournament, support a tournament, Mr. Speaker, that runs in about 5 counties, and we were moving to the 6th county in the Kerio Valley region, which uses sports, and for that reason, it was football last year, to bring warring communities together, the Pokots, the Marakwets, the Turkana, the Samburus, Mr. Speaker, the people of Tugen, to bring them together to play together. And last year, as a result of that tournament, for the first time, we had an opportunity. Some leaders from Turkana got the first time to be in Kapenguria when we were playing football, and I was really surprised. And that way, sports, Mr. Speaker, is also one way of bringing people together. I have a passion for the young people, and I believe that that passion is going to be translated to action, Mr. Speaker, once I assume office. And that passion is to sort the problems that are bedeviling our young people. The problem of unemployment, Mr. Speaker. The problem of our sports sector, the way it's mismanaged, Mr. Speaker. And many other issues that I hope we will delve into. Because my teacher, Honorable Gladys Boshole, has asked a very wide question. If I'm left to answer, Mr. Speaker,
I want to narrow you down now to
yes, I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The much you have said and said it well. Majority Leader?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Going forward now, we answer questions directly.
Honorable Speaker, allow me to start with a question on FIFA. CS nominee FKF received a letter from FIFA in March threatening suspension following a litany of court cases bedeviling the Kenyan Federation. And to date, FKF has not held their AGM, nor released an election roadmap. If you get the opportunity to serve in this ministry or don't to hear what you intend to do, I do know you're a football fan, but the teams that you support are not Kenyan teams, at least the ones I see you online supporting. What will you do to make sure that our football gets back its glory and at least Kenyans can be watching our Premier League the way they watch the English Premier League? Two, you have clearly put out your report card for the time that you are the Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure. I remember a year ago, you appeared in Parliament and promised Parliament and the people of Kenya that you would be exploring PPP as a model, an alternative model of financing huge infrastructural projects. I do know there was some work on Adani at the airport. Would want to hear whether this is the Kipchumba Murkomen who has been accused on social media of selling, in quotes, our airport. Did you or did you not sell our airport? And who did you sell to?
Junet as well.
The Speaker,
Yes.
I have taken note that the CS nominee, last time we vetted him here under your chairmanship, and I've seen he has just come with the same suit that he came with that time. I have the picture with me here in my phone, Mr. Speaker. I was waiting for a different one.
It's the same suit.
The same suit and the same tie. I was looking for something else.
Maybe that's his attire of luck.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the people who live in the valleys of Elgeyo Marakwet were told him, if you want to get approval, just take that suit and that tie. Yes. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, the question I want to ask him is that one is about this Ministry of Sports. I wanted to ask him that about protection and growth of local content. What measures will you take to protect Kenyan artists from plagiarism? Then how is the government going to assist local artists, local creatives in achieving 60% of content for local broadcast? How will you ensure that all Kenyans, including those who do not have access to TV, can consume our local content? How will you achieve that? And lastly, Waziri, from your previous office, please put it very clear to this committee. What is this matter of Adani and Jomo Kenyatta Airport? When did you travel to India? Whom did you go? What is the content of the letter? Everything. We want to know whether the Jomo Kenyatta Airport is still Kenyan Airport or it is now Mumbai International Airport. Please.
Yes, nominee.
Mr. Chair, as a matter of fact, what...
You either refer to me as chairman or speaker. I'm not a chair. I'm sitting on one.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
The chairperson or chairman.
Yes.
Why don't you like chairperson, Mr. Speaker? Because you don't want to give room for agenda. Yes. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If I say this, I will offend you and other people. I am an ardent fan. Contrary to what Mr. Kimani Ichung'wah said, I am a serious fan of Gor Mahia. I used to. Does
that offend me?
Because you are a fan. I suspect you are AFC.
I'm a fan of Arsenal. No. My local team is AFC.
On a light note, I used to. On Saturdays in the St. Patrick's High School, we used to be allowed to get out of school. So we used to sneak from Iten all the way to Eldoret to watch Gor Mahia play KCC. And I was really used to be thrilled. So I've been a Gor Mahia fan for a long period of time. Besides that, in UK, I support Manchester, and in Spain, I support Real Madrid. Mr. Speaker, sports is for fun. And Mr. Speaker, I agree with Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. Those days when we used to support Gor Mahia, AFC, and all the other teams, Shabana, among others, KCC, we even used to know all the players, up to the reserve team. Now, Mr. Speaker, I don't even know our Gor Mahia players, who they are, even when they change. Why? Because the standard of football has gone down over time. It is a paradox because media, access to media has increased. Meanwhile, the accessing sports and publicity of sport and standard of sports has gone down. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I agree with Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah that the place that has to start is, Mr. Speaker, football, sports management, and for this purpose, FKF. Mr. Speaker, it is not right that for the last 8 years, you have an organization that has a leadership in office that has not been elected, but they are there in perpetuity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's not just FKF, it's AK. AK has been there for 12 years without an election. Cricket Association, the same. Badminton, the same. Mr. Speaker, for swimming, the same. There is a problem, a serious problem, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to sports management in this country. And Mr. Speaker, what is also worse is that there is a collaboration. And unfortunately, as an officer of the court, I have to say this. There is a collaboration between these organizations and, Mr. Speaker, court orders. If you find why the AK has never held elections for 12 years, it's because they are perpetuating themselves using a court order. That is the same way the FKF is perpetuating itself along a court order. Mr. Speaker, the first thing I will do is to make sure that we bring all the stakeholders, and Mr. Speaker, I promise I'll do that within the next 1 month, all the stakeholders in different sectors of sports to make sure that we have a conversation on how to turn around these sports. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I would like, and I hope the Chief Justice is watching me, or even if she's not watching me, she'll be told. I'd like to have a meeting with the Chief Justice, Mr. Speaker, should I be approved, to discuss with the Chief Justice how they will expeditiously make decisions in relation to, Mr. Speaker, elections and officials of sports associations. Mr. Speaker, the Chief Justice and our judges must understand that they are blocking young people from accessing opportunities, Mr. Speaker. The third issue, Mr. Speaker, is that I am going to request those people who have served for more than 8 years in any federation, Mr. Speaker, to recuse themselves and give an opportunity to new people who have energy and vigor to be elected, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that they take over these associations. The last thing, Mr. Speaker, I'll say on that point is
they will never recuse themselves.
I know.
Just restructure the constitution.
I'm coming to the next one.
Give them 2 terms, non-renewable. After 2 terms, 3 years, 4 years, they finish, they go.
I was coming to that, Mr. Speaker. I was coming to the next issue. The next issue, Mr. Speaker, is that we will make sure that we will not finance any sports federation that, Mr. Speaker, is not following the Sports Act and does not do regular elections. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that we must deal with is that we cannot hide. Our sports federations cannot continue to hide, saying that the resources they get from FIFA or World Athletics Organization or International Badminton Organizations are not subject to auditing. We must audit that money, Mr. Speaker, and we will involve Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, we will involve DCI if it requires, Mr. Speaker. That money is given to Kenya, not for the association themselves. It's on behalf of the young people of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, and we must take them by the horns, Mr. Speaker. And I promise you, I am not an easy person to play with. I am going to go straight to these federations. I'm going to deal with these federations. And if they accept, if they want to, Mr. Speaker, to continue operating, they must accept to work with us. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that to return our football and to return our sports, Mr. Speaker, back, we must also make sure that football management is done well, but on the other side, we must also support the private sector. For example, Safaricom with Chapadimba, they're doing a very good job in identifying talent. We need to encourage other associations, other companies, Mr. Speaker, with tax rebates that are paid on time and transparently to make sure that we return private sector to be able to support our sports teams, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know there are many other issues on sports, but that was very specific to FIFA and the cases that are there. Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, Mr. Mwenda is my friend, Mwendwa, and Tuei is a person I know. I want these people to just believe in the people of Kenya and give a chance.
You are confirmed.
Yes.
You are not being confirmed to go and work with friends. You are going confirmed to go and work for the people of Kenya.
That's why I'm saying, Mr. Speaker,
yes,
they are my friends, but they need to know, Mr. Speaker, that time is up. The people of Kenya would like to have an organization that is being run in a proper manner and in a accountable manner. And they need to know one thing. Murkomen is not alone. Now I have an army behind me of young people. Mr. Speaker, they either voluntarily exit these positions and accept the changes that we need, or we greet them or occupy them, Mr. Speaker. This is
That will be unlawful.
Mr. Speaker.
And we encourage you not to go that route.
No, Mr. Speaker.
If you are confirmed.
No, not illegally. We will do it, Mr. Speaker, in a peaceful manner, because, Mr. Speaker, we will follow Article 37 very carefully, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that this is achieved. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that on the PPP issue of the airport, PPP is a very important concept of developing our infrastructure. You know that, Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, on the road of Rironi-Mau Summit, already the previous government had committed itself on the PPP. Unfortunately, the contractor they worked with was not willing to ensure that there is no transfer of guarantee to the people of Kenya. That is the reason why we are terminating the contract. Otherwise, the road would have started if they had accepted not to transfer that burden to the people of Kenya. We are redoing that PPP because of that. Mr. Speaker, for the airport, I want to be very clear, Mr. Speaker, to the people of Kenya. I have not, and I do not have the capacity to enter into any PPP as a person, as a cabinet secretary. And I have not in any way sold the airport. Mr. Speaker, the truth of the matter is this. The president has said this publicly. The PCS has said this publicly. PPP, the people of Kenya need to be taken through the process of PPP. A PIIP proposal, which is the case of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, that is privately initiated proposal. Mr. Speaker, which is part of PPP. Mr. Speaker, is not the first one. The first PIIP, Mr. Speaker, in this country was the expressway. The expressway was through a PIIP. The government evaluated it. They found a proper contractor. Now we have expressway with a contract period of 30 years, transferable back to the people of Kenya once the road is used and maintained. Mr. Speaker, the difference between the expressway and the airport is that there was a proposal. And this is not just one proposal. People keep coming with proposals. Some are serious, some are not serious. Some you invite them to come for meetings, they don't come. When a PIIP proposal has been done, the contracting authority, in this case Kenya Airports Authority, goes through a preliminary process of establishing the viability and the verifying the existence of the company, the capacity, and so forth. Once they do the preliminary process, Mr. Speaker, as the case is in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, that process now moves to PPP committee, PPP's directorate in the ministry, in the treasury. That process has not even reached the treasury yet. What the Kenya Airports Authority was to do is to first establish the relationship with the proponent. Now, they have reached a certain threshold now that they should be able now to do public participation and stakeholder engagement, after which they will send the report to PPP's committee. The PPP directorate will move it back to the contracting authority. The contracting authority will write to the ministry. The ministry, the cabinet secretary in charge of transport, when the time comes, will write to the Attorney General. The Attorney General will go through it, Mr. Speaker, if he agrees. Also, it is forwarded to the Treasury Minister. The Minister, if he agrees, you do a CAB memo. And you know, Mr. Speaker, you have worked in government. A CAB memo will be circulated to among the parties. It's tabled in the cabinet. And if the cabinet agrees, they pass it. So for someone to wake up one morning and say all such an elaborate process would have involved one individual, let alone even one agency. A PPP process is a collective process of government. And I want to assure the people of Kenya that your assets are safe. Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is safe. When this process advances, and I hope it advances, we will get to the level where we will make sure that the product that we get is going to benefit the people of Kenya. One thing I want to assure you, the first thing I did was to resolve the dispute that was there. There was a claim of 20 billion shillings hanging on KA. Through negotiation and mediation, we made sure that we negotiated out and only we are paying 600 million shillings. Mr. Speaker, that now the airport is ready for investment, ready to receive investment, like other airports. Once we are done with that, Malindi, for example, where Honorable Baya comes from, Mr. Speaker, has got funding from Italian government, and we are able to get funding from Italian government to build a modern airport in Malindi. This is how we should move. If we succeed to get PPP in Jomo Kenyatta, and again, another thing I want to assure Kenyans, where the proponent will build the terminal is the only size of land, maybe 20, 30 acres. It's not 1,000 acres, the total acres of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. It's only a small section that will be concessioned where the proponent will build the terminal. And we need it. Otherwise, if we don't need it, Mr. Speaker, if we don't do it, we will become, Mr. Speaker, the last in this region. Ethiopia has defeated us. Rwanda is about to complete their airport. Tanzania has improved theirs. Even Uganda have a better airport. Even Entebbe is looking more presentable. The same Kenyans who are talking about leaking roofs, drainage systems, Mr. Speaker, very bad infrastructure at the airport,
nominee
should be able to support that process.
nominee.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
You're just confirming one thing.
Yes.
Even the president lamented that the weakest link in his government was public communication. You seem to have all the facts, but nobody has been told.
Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that PCS has said, despite the fact that the presidents were communicated,
but it
remember this
it
issue.
came because of the storm. But if it was explained along the way as you went about these things, the public would have understood you better.
Let me absolve the KA for this reason. This is a proposal of March.
Honorable
of March.
Yes. I think what we just need to we have to admit that we were bad communicators. Just assure Kenyans that you will communicate better in your next assignment, and that you'll advise your successor to ensure that this message you have given us today of the great work you have done will go out to be known by the public. We can now.
Yes, Unit.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with you. You see, Jomo Kenyatta is the biggest airport in the country.
In the region.
In the region, actually. And that's the biggest, one of the biggest assets Kenyans have. You want to go PPP with it. And Adani has written a letter saying that he wants to go PPP. You are not informing Kenyans that Adani, a man called Adani, has written to us. And you expect Kenyans to keep quiet. And they can see the airport was almost going. They will not keep quiet. They will not keep quiet.
Mr. Anyway, let's move on.
For the record, let me just say for the record.
You are being evaluated for Minister for Sports, so let's move to sports.
But my integrity on this issue is important.
We move on.
That, Mr. Speaker, this is a proposal of March this year. Before you communicate to the people of Kenya, you always get every year 2-3 proposals. As a matter of fact, I can confess, we've received, for airports in Kenya, we've received more than 20 proposals when I was in office. But you keep evaluating to see who is a joker, who is a serious person. Once you achieve a certain threshold, the public participation engagement is done, which was supposed to be done from this July. But, Mr. Speaker, it coincided with the time that the president made the changes, when we were now supposed to do this. Number two, more than 5 times, I have communicated PPP on Jomo Kenyatta International Airport through Parliament. Several times I've been asked this question, and I've said there are proposals that we are working on, looking at, and we will communicate to the public about the PPP. So, Mr. Speaker, the time had not reached for us to make that public.
You've made the point.
The last thing I want to say is that Honorable Junet talked about protection of local content. I think, Mr. Speaker, we just need to be serious as a country. We need to implement our intellectual property laws, Mr. Speaker. I know that we have institutions in place, Kenya Copyright Board, Kenya Industrial Property Institute. We have also, Mr. Speaker, Anti-Counterfeit Agency, which I served as the first board member, who are supposed to do enforcement. I think that needs to be done. Suffice to note, Mr. Speaker, that is not within my ministry. It is in the Arts and Culture Department in the Ministry of Gender, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also in the terms of local content, I totally agree with Honorable Junet. We need to bring CitizenTV and Royal Media have a product that they try to support local content. Mr. Speaker, they want to go the same way with Sony Studio, Universal Studios, and so forth. We need to support more of the same of local companies that are going to take local content, air them, and, Mr. Speaker, pay our artists across the country. And this 60% local content is easily achievable if we find ways of engaging them. And I think what I have had for the short period after my nomination, I have engaged the sector. Many people think that this is one sector that has never had proper public participation. The people have the ideas, the stakeholders have the ideas. It needs just a leadership that is listening, and I'm going to listen to them, and we work together towards achieving this 60% local content.
Members, one question each, and Minister nominee, you answer concisely and precisely. Naisula.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to say this because PPP might happen again where the nominee will go to. And you heard what the nominee of Treasury said this morning, that Kenyans are scared of PPPs because most of the time there's so much miscommunication about it. We hope as a committee you will do better in your communication and also look at those PPPs that they serve the interest of the country more than the investors. That is what the nominee of Treasury said. But to my
that is just a comment.
It's a comment. I have a comment. Kenya is hosting the African Nations Championship 2025 next year and the AFCON in 2027. Do you have any ideas on how Kenya can deliver this to world-class standards? What will we do differently if we find you suitable to hold that office? And how do you plan to incorporate stakeholder and public feedback into your planning process? And lastly, do you know if as a country we have a gender violence and abuse policy in sports?
Nominee.
In the interest of time, I will go straight to, as guided Mr. Speaker, to say that yes, I am aware that we are hosting CHAN next year. We are preparing Nyayo Stadium and Kasarani for purpose of, to be ready by December for purpose of CHAN, and then in preparation for the Africa Cup of Nations in 2027. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that to deliver this world-class, to deliver the tournament to a world-class level, Mr. Speaker, we are going to put in place a steering committee that has all the stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, I'm also inviting, and I will invite the private sector to quickly join in. We don't need to wait until late, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that they invest, Mr. Speaker, in the opportunities that come with, Mr. Speaker, the Africa Cup of Nations in 2027. Mr. Speaker, also we are working on the infrastructure. Talanta Stadium, which is going to be in Jamhuri along Gong Road, Mr. Speaker, is ongoing. I will make sure that it's delivered to the required standards. Mr. Speaker, also all the stadium where the players who are going to train, we are going also to make sure that the stadia are put to be world class. One thing that is lacking in our country as we speak, Mr. Speaker, is that we do not have standards put in place in regulation of infrastructure. The law itself, the Sports Act, says that Sports Kenya will set the standards, but the regulations must be put in place. As a cabinet secretary, I promise this committee that will be a priority for me to make sure that all the infrastructure across the country are going to be built based on world-class standards. Because, Mr. Speaker, you will find some counties are awarding contracts, some institutions at national level are awarding contracts to build a stadium, but if you realize the stadium themselves, they are not world class. We are redoing now Nyayo Stadium. Yes, we are redoing Nyayo Stadium. Something we used to think it has 30,000 capacity. The reality is that it can only accommodate 18,000 people. The same to Kasarani is going to come down to 50,000 from the 60,000 we used to think. Because when you now deal with the standards itself, so required standards, it's going to be different. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the gender violence is a serious issue in sports, and particularly more prevalent, Mr. Speaker. In fact, not just violence, gender violence, abuse, and sexual abuse, Mr. Speaker, among athletes who are women. Mr. Speaker, you know the case of Agnes Tirop. You are an ardent fan of athletics, who was killed, Mr. Speaker, in my county. Mr. Speaker, that is just one case. I know athletes, world-class athletes with world records, whom I have had to assist in the past as a senator, to call the DCI to protect them from attacks from, Mr. Speaker, pests that call themselves husbands. Once they see an athlete as a potential, they present themselves as suitors, Mr. Speaker, pretend to be in a marriage, Mr. Speaker, and then they prey on them and take their wealth. Mr. Speaker, this is an area that I have a passion for, not just because I've been appointed here, but something I have thought through. Even when I went to the funeral of Agnes Tirop, this is some of the things I talked about. And as a result of what happened with the Agnes Tirop, there was a committee that was formed in the ministry that came up with a raft of proposals. One, Mr. Speaker, that all training camps must, if a lady is going to be in a training camp, we must have a female matron in the training camp. Mr. Speaker, for junior athletics, you match training camps with the neighboring institutions. We need to oversight also the managers and the coaches, Mr. Speaker. Not just enough to register them, but we must be able to oversight them to make sure that they are following certain procedures. We don't want our athletes.
Some of them are the pests.
Yes.
Yes, if you don't evaluate them properly.
Absolutely, some of them are the pests. Mr. Speaker, we will not allow as a ministry any of our teams to travel, women to travel for international assignments if they are not accompanied by a female matron. We will not allow them to travel with men alone. Mr. Speaker, this is an area with all those raft of proposals, we are going to make sure that those proposals are put into regulations and be part of also of the revised law, because we need to revise the Sports Act. The Sports Act, Mr. Speaker, does not recognize at all the institutions of county government, does not recognize so many things that are modern. We will make sure that these issues raised by honourable member, Mr. Speaker, are going to be incorporated in the sports updated sports policy.
Let's take Nelson, Posing, and Gikaria, one question each in that row.
Waziri, the Olympics are ongoing, and I like the fact that you've also raised the issue of athletes from the North Rift. There's a dire situation with our athletes. As much as they are doing Kenya proud, there's really nothing to show for in terms of infrastructure and support that the government has provided to athletes. What you see there is sweat and tears from athletes who've struggled without any support. Many of you have seen athletes, dodging motor vehicles and motorcycles on the road, training. That should not be the situation our athletes should be subjected to. Many of them actually have made it into the global stage just by sheer determination. Waziri, coming from that region, please tell the country what you will do different this time around. Your predecessor, when he was here, said the same thing. He said he was going to change. He actually said he was going to give them world-class treatment, but the situation is totally different today. Number two, the people of Kericho County have sent me. No, this is a comment. They can decide to answer or ignore, but just for the record, the people of Kericho County have sent me to you. I landed with you in Kericho County, in Kerenga Airstrip, and there was a contractor on site. Immediately we left, the contractor left. What really happened, Waziri?
Thank you. They left together. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Murkomen, many Kenyans think that you have actually been taken to the right place because you come from a county of a home of champions, exactly. So I think many people are seeing that, including myself. But my question, Honorable Murkomen, is there is a gap. And again, people think the Minister for Sports is Minister of Nairobi, so they think that it's Minister of Nairobi. There's nothing on the ground. So if you get the favor of House and you become the Minister, Honorable Murkomen, what will you do to bring the nexus between the national office, your office at national level, and the county, so that people in sub-locations or locations can actually feel that the Minister for Sport is their minister? Is there any way where good people or good sport people, and particularly maybe football, can win in that sub-location or location and be taken through, so that at least they can also feel like they're also national people, so that they don't see the Minister for Sports as only Minister for Nairobi? Thank you.
Gikaria?
Thank you, Chairman. Mine is just to, I'm just hoping that the nominee will crack the whip at FKF. Honorable Chairman, yes, and he has to, Honorable Chairman. I remember one day, 142 million was paid to some English company to procure the broadcasting van, which never arrived in the country. And after paying, we were told that the company that was given that money went into insolvency. So I think it is important for us to crack. But my question is, the nominee, my friend Murkomen, one of the best strikers in the Bunge Football Club, is football and talent was created at the youth centers, at the location and sub-location, then districts at those days, either sponsored by, in collaboration with, partnership with either Germany, Netherlands, and England. I don't know whether there's a policy for you to bring back, because when you talk about football, people think of Harambee Stars and AFC and Gor Mahia, but these players come from some place. So what policy is there to revamp the youth centers' sports, not only for football, but sports in general? Thank you, Chairman.
Can answer those three, nominee?
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Koech has talked about infrastructure. We have a number of pending stadia that needs to be completed. That includes, Mr. Speaker, Kapkatet Stadium in his county. It includes also, Mr. Speaker, the Wote Stadium in Makueni. It also includes the Kamarin, the famous Kamarin Stadium, Mr. Speaker, in Iten. In fact, I was so embarrassed. I'm sure most of you have seen this documentary in CNN, which has been run in the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's now Kamarin is a monument of shame because the athletes there are complaining about the infrastructure, and the journalists are showing how the Cameroon has become what it is. Mr. Speaker, I have been briefed already, Mr. Speaker, in the process of preparing myself for this confirmation hearing, that some of the processes are ongoing in terms of delivering the infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that the President has already given direction that sports fund should be wholly supporting the sports activities, and one of which is delivery of infrastructure. I will make sure that, unfortunately, I'm being followed by the problem of pending bills all the way to sports infrastructure, but we'll make sure that we structure the sports fund in such a way that we'll deliver our infrastructure. We need to complete Bugungu Stadium, Mr. Speaker, in Bungoma. We need to complete the stadium, Mr. Speaker, in Bungoma.
Masinde Muliro.
Masinde Muliro, yes. I was confusing with the one in
Buhong is also stalled.
Yes, it's stalled, but the main one was to make sure that Masinde Muliro is covered properly and completed. The one is Kericho is completed because we built it recently because of these Madaraka issues. We are going to do a Kwale one. It must be also up to standard, but also all the other stadiums, Mr. Speaker, that are still pending will be completed to standard.
Speaker, also Udaya Stadium and Ruringu Stadium.
Ruringu and Udaya, Mr. Speaker, have also, especially Ruringu is in advanced stage. We'll make sure that we complete and restructure it. It is part of the stadiums, Mr. Speaker, that are going to be used in African Cup of Nations for training, and we will make sure that we deal with that. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of, so the infrastructure is very important. The second thing is, Mr. Speaker, it's not just enough to do infrastructure. The government must invest in the training itself, in identification of talent, and I'll marry this with the question of Honorable Kikaria. We will use the Kenya Academy of Sports to make sure that we establish training centers in at least all the counties, Mr. Speaker, where we are identify talent are trained. We will work also with the schools. Schools are better placed to help us to identify the talent. There's some of our footballers, like Adrian, Mr. Speaker, who are picked last year to go to Spain, who are, as a result of sports championship in high school and in primary school. We will make sure that we work with them. In fact, one of the issues that I need to explore is to make sure that the Kenya Academy of Sports are going to train all the teachers who are coaches across the country. And not just training, they must also be certified, so that that certification is going to be recognized in their promotion, so that we need to use the teachers who are already in schools to make sure that we develop. That is really what is bottom up in terms of sports. Mr. Speaker, just to mention the Karenga Stadium in passing, as has been asked by Honorable Nelson, airstrip. It is true that we established and built Karenga airstrip for purpose at that point in time to facilitate the travel as insofar as the Madaraka Day was concerned. However, we had promised the people of Kericho that we will do a world-class airport there, and we needed land. Even when we built the airstrip, the land did not belong to the government of Kenya. It's still being owned by the private company that owns the tea farm. And the negotiations are in advanced stage, Mr. Speaker. I believe we have, that we will succeed to get, they had offered about 20 acres, but I said it will be useful to get at least 100 acres in that place so that we build an airstrip properly with a proper terminal, Mr. Speaker, to serve the people of Kericho. The money had already been set aside by Kenya Airports Authority. Some of the money that was allocated at that time, part of it has been used, part has been left to complete the negotiations. I have no doubt in my mind that my successor will deliver Karenga airstrip, Mr. Speaker, in the fullness of time. Had I been given a bit of more time in the same ministry, I had no doubt that within the next 1 year, we were going to be able to deliver the Karenga airstrip. Not just Karenga airstrip, many other airstrips across the country that the people of Kenya are demanding, because we want to make travel become bottom-up, cheaper, and our country accessible, including the plans we had in Moyale and Marsabit County and a number of the airstrips, Mr. Speaker. I agree with Honorable Kosing. Honorable Kosing's county produces some of the best athletes in the country. Mr. Speaker, you know, Honorable Kosing and I come from the same area. Leland area produces some of the best athletes, world beaters. But, Mr. Speaker, the facilities are not there. There's a place that border both of us, they have a small training camp. There's also another training camp in Kapengura, among other places. But, Mr. Speaker, most of those camps are owned by private people, and they're very small. Mr. Speaker, the first gap is that Sports Act does not recognize counties else anywhere. That is why we must review Sports Act immediately to make sure that even as national government set standards and do some of the sports functions, the county governments are given, have a partnership with national government insofar as implementation. Mr. Speaker, we also need to make sure that sports development, the grassroots, the same question that had been asked by Honorable Kikaria and Honorable Nelson, that we need to make sure that through Academy of Sports, we are identifying talent very early and mark them to be taken to specific areas of training so that we can succeed. In fact, the other thing that we must do is to make sure that even as athletes prepare for their sports, they should not leave their education. There is a serious gap, especially in athletics, Mr. Speaker, where many of the athletes, once they go to running, they are told, you know, concentrate on running. Yet when we go to rugby, you have graduates with master's degree and they still succeed in rugby sevens and their rugby career. So it's just an attitude of how we fashioned the athletics. We need to make sure also we support the education. And to follow what Honorable Kikaria said, we need also to deal with these investments. We need to attract more people to establish academies in the country, sports academies. I know the international schools have very good facilities for training young people. We need also that to be affordable to the people at the bottom of the pyramid by making sure that we support investors who can come from out of the country to do what used to be done in Mathare and other areas to using, Mr. Speaker, establishment of academies. Mr. Speaker, the last thing I'd like to say is that Honorable Kikaria spoke about the 142 million van and the all problems that we have in this sector. Mr. Speaker, corruption is a big issue in this.
You already covered that.
Yes, I'm just saying that, just as he said, we are going to be able to deal with the issue of corruption
you have to carry
head on.
A forensic audit.
Yes,
on
Mr.
how
Speaker.
much money international organizations have been sending to these institutions. Period.
It is so ordered, Mr. Speaker. You have ordered.
Mary?
Thank you. You've touched on sports academies. Honorable nominee, 31 academies of sports are earmarked to commence this financial year, 24-25. They were advertised, but again cancelled. Honorable nominee, we are at a time when Kenyans are tired of too much talking. Kenyans want to see action, not what has been witnessed, PR, managing of members and representatives of the people. I want you to tell Kenyans If you succeed in this nomination to the ministry, how long will it take you to advertise for the commencement of the sports academies? And these academies are being funded by the sports fund. I happen to be a member in that committee. And you have said that it is possible to get partnerships even to support that endeavor. So tell Kenyans when we will see the sports academies commence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To Honorable Murkomen, we've worked with him in this Transport Committee, and I want to ask him, you have talked about the Jan 2025 and 2027, but I didn't hear you mention anything about the stadium in Meru being used, because the stadium was done for over R1 billion shillings, and already it has not been even handed over. The running track is coming out. And the youth who come to leagues, they spend over R1 million shillings just in courses run by FKF for training and all that. But in return, they do not get anything. And then they pay 60,000 to join leagues. And after joining leagues, they have to pay to use the stadium, 15,000 shillings. And I believe it's all over. So my question to you, Honorable Murkomen, is what are you going to do about the youth? It's not just football. It's all sports which we need the youth to be involved. And as well, the same Sports Kenya, which did Meru Kinoru Stadium, and it's a very big stadium, I believe you've been there, demolished our police station in the stadium, demolished the ACC's office, and promised to give 42 million to build new ones, where your two predecessors, if you are confirmed, Honorable Ambassador Amina, she ignored it. Honorable Ababu Mamba, when he came to Parliament, he says, yes, as soon as funds are available, he will give. So I want to know from you if that one for Kinoru, what you will do. And we've got even another stadium in Maua, which is waterlogged. We've got another one in Kobo. It's not there. And in Timau, and many other places.
You are making a speech. Yes, yes, Murugara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nominee, talk about Standia. The Chuka Stadium is also not complete. Talk about your previous ministry of roads. Tharaka-Nithi is the home of stored roads, the most ugly of them all, including Chakariga Marimanti. You need to comment on that one. Then a comment on how you fed sports persons, because I had a young man who actually went all the way to Rwanda on the high jump, came back. I pleaded with your predecessor to meet him and fed him, the PSC Sports. I received the cold shoulders and nobody did any of that. What is the policy you're likely to have as regards the vetting of sports persons? Young people, actors or artists, they are occupying us because they're not happy. They are doing all this work, but their royalties are not being paid. What are you likely to do about improvement on payment of royalties for these artists, including what benefit Kenya gets from all these nice movies we see internationally with the Animal World, National Geographic, Animal Films, Wildlife? What benefit does Kenya get from all this? Because this is where we should be selling our property and receiving payment for. Thank you.
Nominee, answer those three.
Mr. Speaker, again, I'll try to summarize. On the Honorable Daud's Chan 2025, yes, we are prepared, and I would love to get a brief whether Kinoru Stadium is one of the beneficiaries in terms of either training or playing. I know, of course, Kinoru Stadium. I've even addressed a rally there, the famous rally before. And you speak to the same things I talked about. I told you about standards. A county starts a stadium, They build. Sometimes it is a money-minting project. There is no intention to complete, or even it's completed, it is shoddy. It is not just Kinoru alone. All the stadium across the country. There was the case of Kericho. They finished it and it was coming out. Machako was the same. There were many other places across the country. That is why it's important to put in place standards that you can measure against, so that if you don't achieve those standards, it is easy to even prosecute the contractor, because there is international standard adopted locally. And I promise you, that will be my greatest priority. And I hope I can do that within 3 months, because I have had a conversation and bring it to this house, so that this parliament and parliament can be able to pass regulations that will make sure that standards of sports facilities are adhered to. I also want to say that on the question of your demolished DCC office,